the obvious thing that has happened. This is I think it's safe to say we are a college football podcast. If we could only choose one sport to watch, I think it would be college football. And there was some news that broke here late on Friday after our episode 89 dropped. And the Pac-12 is dead. It is dead as it seems. Cal and Stanford. There's talk of them going to the ACC. It sounds like the other Oregon State, Washington State are likely candidates headed to the Mountain West, which is not good if you are an NDSU fan. Kind of really puts a dent into the into NDSU's plans of moving up, because really at the moment there's really not an opportunity, with the probably close to a 90% chance that Washington State and Oregon State go to the Mountain West. But I don't know how I feel about this. I think one of the great part of college football is the traditions, the rivalry, the regionality of the sports, where you're going to lose the Civil War, you're going to lose the Apple Cup. I think both teams said they they are willing to play each other, but it takes away from those rivalries, because there's not a division title berth on the line. It's just a game. It still means a lot, but we almost have the NFL in college sports, the way the conferences are now set up.
Exactly. Because Dylan, to your point, let's take it back last year to the Civil War with Oregon and Oregon State, that game in Corvallis. The Pac-12, they changed it up last year where there's the top two teams make it. They got rid of the North and the South, because in our Pac-12 title game last year, we had Utah, USC. When they had the divisions, both of those teams were in the Pac-12 South. Oregon State upsets Oregon Week 13, rivalry week, and kicks Oregon out of a Pac-12 title game. That's huge. That's Oregon State gets momentum going into this year. They get DJ Uiagalelei to transfer there, be back on the West Coast, maybe a little closer to his Polynesian family. It means so much more when you play that game in November, because teams are ironed out. They know what they can and can't do well. If you play this game week 2 or week 3, it's going to be bad football. Like Iowa State is important in week 2 and week 3 because they're not in the Big Ten. So I understand that's why when you have to play that game week 2, week 3. But could you imagine if something happened to the Big Ten and Michigan and Ohio State played on September 16th?
Yeah, I don't want to think about that.
It'd be awful. And I'm not trying to compare Oregon and Oregon State to Michigan and Ohio State, because it's nowhere near that. But for those fans up there, it's a big deal. You're getting close to the holiday season. The regular season is over. There's been some years probably where Oregon State didn't have anything to play for, but we're thinking, let's beat Oregon. So it's ruined. It's like you said, it's kind of ruining college sports in that aspect. And then also, I feel bad for Oregon State and Washington State, because out of nowhere, they're not going to be in a top conference anymore. They're going to be put in the lowly Mountain West when they were in a big boy division. And Oregon State's getting better. Washington State, for a couple of years with Mike Leach, almost had a chance to play in a Pac-12 title game by winning the North Division. But then in the Apple Cup, they couldn't beat Washington. The Huskies beat them, and it's kind of sad for those programs. They were playing the best of the best, and now they got to dip down to play the Mountain West. And Boise State's not what it used to be. Fresno is Utah State, Colorado State. I mean, these Washington State kids, they can't get fired up for this, like when they're playing Utah, USC, and Oregon in Washington every year. It's just not fair.
No, it's not. And it's also the football's going to be fine. That's going to go on. I mean, these kids are used to traveling cross country. They're going to miss a Friday of classes. But what's not thought about here is all the other sports, the softball, the field hockey, soccer, all your, I guess, in a sense, your non-revenue sports, where you're going to you're going to fly out on a Tuesday, and most of these flights they're not chartered. You know, you're flying on an airline, you're flying with regular people, and you know, you're going to be away. And you know, you talked about Eli Drinkwitz, you know, brought up a really good point. And I don't know if you have or if you've seen it, but you know, he talked about, I'll read it here. He said, "Did we count the cost for the student athletes involved in this decision? We're talking about a football decision, that's exactly what it is. And that drives, and that's what powers most athletic programs is a good football program. But like we said, they won't be affected by it at all." But you know, he brought up this aspect, and it's very true. You know, it talks about, do you know what the number one symptom of or cause of mental health is? It's the lack of rest and sleep. Traveling in those baseball, softball games, they travel commercial, they get done playing at 4, they got to go to the airport, they come back, it's 3 or 4 in the morning, they got to go to class. I mean, did we ask any of them? I don't worry at all about the game. That the game is going to be strong. Football is going to be fine. But did we consider the people that we are entrusted with? Did we consider the student athlete? Well, no. Nobody ever considers the student athlete. This is all about lining the bigwigs' pocketbooks, which they are already rich. You know, and going back to the Pac-12, this is all because they weren't able to get a TV deal because the last 2 commissioners they hired were absolutely airhead and incompetent, where, you know, they couldn't get a TV deal. Larry Scott thought that, let's base our headquarters in San Francisco and tech in Silicon Valley, where nobody likes football or knows what football is, for that matter, you know. And basically, and for the most part, those people in Northern California probably hate football.
Well, and it begs you this question: why wouldn't the Pac-12 put their headquarters in Seattle? With
Seattle, Los Angeles.
Or Los Angeles. You know, one of those 2 cities. I would maybe go Seattle just because in Los Angeles there's so much going on. And I understand when USC is on, there's 4 programs in this country that are better than them in terms of a national brand. But if you want to matter, go to the Northwest where you have the University of Washington and you have the Seattle Seahawks. It's a football community. But yeah, in San Francisco, where, like you said, it's tech driven and people don't like college football.
Go look at Cal Stadium and Stanford Stadium. There's nobody there.
Nobody's there.
Andrew Luck tells a tremendous story about how he went on the road and he came back at like 2:00 on a Sunday morning. His roommates were getting in from a party and they're like, "Where were you all weekend?" We had a football game. "Oh, I didn't even know you were on the team." Like, that just shows how little Silicon Valley cares about football.
Oh God, yeah.
And the more you invest into the fans and you invest into the kids, the money is gonna come. Like, and these guys, they've made more money than they know what to do with. They're well off. At what point money is not everything. Like, you know, there was a great scene about it in Ted Lasso where they were trying to form a new soccer league, and Becca, the owner of AFC Richmond, you know, says, "Is this a joke?" You know, and she goes in telling a story of how her ex-husband, who owned AFC Richmond before and now owns a different team, how he used to sneak in to AFC Richmond games because he just had a great love for that team, love for that game. When you divide all these teams up, you take away the traditions, the rivalries, the regionality of the sport. It's gonna, in a sense, just take away from some of the games, some of the meaningless. Even like the Michigan-Ohio State game. As much as that game in the Saturday after Thanksgiving means to everybody, where, you know, I look forward to a bunch of 19-year-old kids dictating my mood for the rest of the essentially.
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves here.
It doesn't matter because then who knows? You're going to get to play them the next week. And possibly in the playoff with it going to 12 teams.
I don't think that'll change a whole lot. I mean, maybe having to play in the Big Ten title game the next week, that'll still be cool. But I think for Michigan and Ohio State, you at least know you're guaranteed on the calendar, Dylan, you are going to play always the Saturday after Thanksgiving, whether it's the 25th through the 28th of November. But I like what you said earlier about the NFL scheduling, because this is what it's going to come down to. Because what the start of next football season right now, the Big Ten, are they going to be at 18 teams?
Yes, yep, because Oregon and Washington are going next year as well.
So I'm guessing 18. 18 is probably the number the Big Ten doesn't want. Let's not kid ourselves here. They probably want closer to 20. And why do I say 20 with the scheduling? Because that way then you can have either 5 divisions of 4 or 4 divisions of 5. And let's say if you want to keep the 8-game schedule, if you have 20 teams, 8-game conference schedule. No, Big Ten plays 9. Yeah, 9.
Yes.
You go 4 divisions of 5, and you essentially, play every team in your division. You'd play, just like the NFL, 1 team in every other division from the year before in the same place you finished. So last year, what did Iowa finish? 3rd or 2nd in the Big Ten West? So then they'd play the second place team from everywhere else. And then maybe they figure it out where it's like on a rotating year basis, you play, another team from a specific division. Or I don't know how they can figure that out, but I have a feeling these numbers are only going to grow, because then the more more teams you get in a conference, the more flexibility you have with your scheduling. Because to your point, it's going to be just like the NFL. So to your point, maybe that Michigan-Ohio State game, I hate to say this, Auburn, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Clemson, Florida State, these traditional rivals, it's not going to matter as much. You know why? Because you're going to get 2 to 3 shots at them every single year. Michigan could lose that game the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But you know what? They know they get a chance to take on Ohio State either the following week or maybe a round in the playoff when they're one of the final 8 teams. Kind of, like last year when the Chiefs lost to the Bengals in the regular season. It sucked. You're pissed off. You lost to that team 3 times in a row. But in the back of your mind, as a player and a fan, hey, we get a chance to face these clowns later on in the year. And then if you win that second game, it means more than the first one. So I think, to your point, it's going to take out some juice on these rivalries, because then you can't, as a team, have that countdown in Michigan's locker room, hey, 14 hours and 12 seconds until we play Ohio State. Is Ohio State going to want to walk around and take out every single letter M on their campus 3 times a year with red sticker? No, that's going to be a lot of work. So you're spot on right there.
They can't even do it once. They are always, if you ever go look at them, they always seem to miss like 1 or 2. And to do it 2 or 3 times, it's just going to get sloppier and sloppier.
Well, exactly. But you probably don't realize how often you use the letter M until you need to cross out every single letter M on your campus, with a campus of over 60,000 students. So it's a big campus. I'm not saying they're smart, because they're not. Ohio State is not a good institution, but it's a big building.
It is, and they're actually going to be looking for a new AD. I saw Gene Smith is stepping down at the end of July of 2024.
Why is that dude, that GMs or ADs always retire at the end of July? Why is that?
I think that's when like their fiscal year ends, possibly
on July 31st.
And the school year's over, so probably bring in the new one, depending on where they bring him from, where he can move in the beginning of May or June and kind of get him acclimated to kind of how things are done, procedures, all of that. Gene can be basically a consultant for him his first month on the job.
Makes sense.
I also saw an interesting comment here from John Canzano. He tweeted this out, that he was talking to a longtime college administrator about the realignment madness. And this gives me hope. And I hope this does happen, because I want to see it go back to some more regionality. As I've said, I don't like it, but it's here, and there's no sense in complaining about it. So here, play who's on your schedule, beat them. If you got to beat them more than once, do it. And but he says he predicts, this administrator said he predicts in 5 to 10 years that they will all migrate back. I don't know how, but 18 to 16 team leagues with all that travel just isn't sustainable.
Well,
It's not.
exactly.
Especially when we had Brian Shawn on a couple of weeks ago. He talked about how it is well over $100,000 when you account in airfare, food, hotels, buses, all of that. And some of these college towns don't have airports, so they're busing an hour or so away from the stadium.
Well, and then also you mentioned, soccer, softball, lacrosse, all those other sports that no one's talking about that aren't revenue drivers. Let's even talk basketball. If you're the Big Ten Conference and you're on coast to coast, if you're Rutgers, could you imagine the possible road trip the Big Ten might put you on? You'll leave Piscataway, you'll fly to Columbus, you'll play a game on Tuesday night in Columbus against the Buckeyes. Then they're going to make you get on a plane, and then on Friday have to go all the way out to the West Coast to play USC. Well, you know what? If the Big Ten is smart, they're thinking, you know what? Rutgers is already out here. They might as well play UCLA, and then who knows? Let's throw in Washington. I could possibly see some 4-game road trips where these schools are thousands of miles away from their campus. Well, at this rate, we can't call them student athletes because they're not going to class. They're not getting good, proper sleep. Again, to your point, all the food that they're going to have to spend, the hotel fees, going from airport to airport, travel. What's the weather like? These universities are not ready for this. They're not professional sports. It's not like when the Spurs go on their road trip every year because there's the rodeo. I think it's the rodeo in San Antonio, where they're gone for 13 days.
For an example, let's just say it for the sake of argument, but which exactly it's you can't it, and mental health is as fragile of a subject as it is, and being homesick. I'm sure you dealt with it a little bit when you were in college. I know right away there's a shock to the system, especially to these young kids, where it's like your first time you're away from mom and dad. You're responsible for yourself. It's not easy. It's a grind. It's not something that these kids should be having to do.
Well, and then also, Dylan, throw in this aspect. When you go on a road trip like that, you're essentially almost professional athletes for that week. You're going to have downtime in these cities. What's going to stop them from getting in trouble? Going to the strip club, buying something off the street from someone they shouldn't do, just walking around some mall. You're in some new city. You're not top shit anymore. You're out in Seattle, getting ready for a basketball game against Washington. You lost a game to USC the other day. You lost your first game to Ohio State. You're wearing a Rutgers basketball shirt. You stick out like a dick in a cake. What's some dude in Seattle? What's going to stop him from running his mouth a little bit? Thinking, I'm going to have some friendly banter with this kid. You're not sleeping right. You're sleeping in a hotel. You got to sleep with a roommate. Maybe he snores, and then you snap and do something you shouldn't do. We got, assault charges against this young man at Rutgers because they were out the mall and someone mouthed off to him and he's tired and he's not thinking straight. It happens all the time in the NBA where dudes get arrested on road trips. What's going to stop that from happening in college sports now?
But Ja Morant, example number 1.
There you go.
But yeah, we will see. I hope similar to what John said in his previous tweet about hoping it migrates back in 5 to 10 years. We hope that happens, but it's here. We're going to see if it works out. And if we're wrong, I guess we'll say we're wrong. But I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm going to say we're not going to be wrong. This is migrating back in 5 to 10 years. And to be honest, I was glad that somebody actually tweeted that out, because when I saw that, I was thinking about that the same thing. It's like, I think people are going to get 5-10 years down the road, and they're going to say that there's going to be talk about migrating back.
Now, I know. I just curious. The Pac-12, they apparently couldn't get things figured out, and then their commissioners are just clowns. Like, did like these TV networks? Did ESPN just want to put all their eggs in the SEC and the Big 12's basket?
They were going all in on streaming, and then when the Big Ten network, when the Big Ten network came, they partnered with Fox, so they got the contracts, so they would get games on Fox, Fox Sports, ESPN. The Pac-12 the Pac-12 network didn't do a partnership with anybody, so they weren't getting any money from Fox or ESPN or any of those. I think I don't fully understand the business end of it, so I wouldn't quote me on that for sure, but that was kind of my understanding is they weren't getting money from they weren't in with Fox or ESPN or CBS.
Gotcha.
Hell, even the Mountain West that might be okay for Washington State and Oregon State because they have a better TV deal than the Mountain West or than the Pac-12 currently.
Because there was CBS Sports Network, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so they at least get something with CBS.
And they get at least, I believe they get at least one game a year on CBS in prime time.
Okay, well, yeah, because every
maybe
week,
not prime time, but they get like a bigger game, and it's usually earlier in the year. But because I remember a few years ago, Washington, Oregon, when it was down in Laramie, was on CBS once.
Okay. Oh, Wyoming, Oregon, you mean?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. And who knows, if a team like Wazoo or Oregon State, when they make that transition, if they do, they'll still play a bigger school in the non-conference. Who knows? Maybe if they're able to keep the Civil War or the Apple Cup alive, maybe that game could be on CBS then. And Washington State could get. Well, you know what? There's a good chance because the Big Ten, they got to deal with CBS. Yeah, they got to deal with everybody except ESPN.
Correct. So, yeah, that's the Pac-12 talk. College football. So we got one more year of normalcy.
Well, and even to mention, Dylan, as of right now, next year the Pac-12 only has 4 teams. That's not enough to be a fully sanctioned conference. So
no.
Yeah, it's not. It's just a matter of not if, but when. To your point, the Pac-12 dies.
Correct.